Christmas comes but once a year, so it's time for my Brooklyn Park Christmas update. Hello everybody, my name's Steve, I'm the British Railroader and welcome to my model railroad room for a little festive update on Brooklyn Park. Now you'll probably have noticed that there hasn't been an update on Brooklyn Park itself for a little while, and there is a reason for this. It's basically because I haven't actually done anything to the layout. Now that quite often happens. I get distracted. I've had quite a few side projects going on, like 2790, my detailing project that I did. But also sometimes you do get a little bit of layout burnout. Now you will have heard me talking about the Model Rail Replacement podcast, which is hosted by Sam and James, who are respectively Empress Path and the Western Signalman. And in a recent episode, which I'll link in the description, they talked about mental health and burnout in the hobby. And it's a very, very common thing. Now, before I go on, let me just say to all of my friends, I'm fine. I'm not having a problem at all. But I have got a little bit of layout burnout with Brooklyn Park. And it is for various reasons. And I think probably the main one is that the layout itself is probably about 75% done. So I've got to the point where I'm just doing the last few bits and pieces. So when you look at the layout, I've got an area here which needs some buildings, which I still need to source. I need to do a little bit of work back here just to fill it in. That could just be with back scenes and flats and things like that. And then behind me, you've got the school in the corner and the apartment blocks over there. And they just need finishing, they need interiors in certain places, not in the entire buildings, but also some lights. And all of those things, along with the scenery that I need to do a little bit more work on the track, though the track is fully laid, wired, painted, ballasted, it just needs some detailing. Whilst all that is done, it's just all of those little, almost tedious jobs that I need to do. And so it's caused just a little bit of burnout, but I will get my mojo back. But it has got me thinking about the next layout. Not going to be happening for a while, but there are a few things that I've learned from this layout that I'll apply to the next. So let's have a look at those. Number one is the track. Now the track itself is fine. I think the only difference in the actual make of track is instead of using Pico Code 83, I'd actually use Pico Code 70 just for the finer appearance. I love Pico track. You know, no sponsorship or anything here. I've just been using Pico track for many, many years. So I would go with that, but the track plan itself could probably do with a bit of refinement. Now, when I built this shelf layout, and this is the first shelf layout that I've built, I was trying to follow Lance Mindheim's principles. The only problem is I didn't quite, because Lance is very much a less is more, don't overcomplicate your track. And what did I do in this tiny little, is it 8 foot long by 4 foot wide space? I overcomplicated it. I've got 6 turnouts. I've managed to get a runaround loop. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spurs for industries. I probably didn't need all of that. And when I look at it now, I think I could have probably just got away with 2, perhaps slightly longer spurs, and perhaps not even the runaround loop, though I do like the runaround loop. So when thinking about future layouts, I'm not necessarily thinking about less point work. If anything, and I'll explain this in a minute, I'm thinking probably going to need more. But I need to think of a more rationalized system. There are actually too many industries here. You can switch them all in one session because they are tiny, so they're not particularly prototypical. But I would have been better with perhaps one big industry or two medium-sized industries instead of four small ones. Number two is the baseboard depth. Now, I'm not talking about this bit here. I mean, that's about 4 inches. The actual baseboard itself is very, very thin. What I mean is actually adding some depth up here, perhaps an inch or so, just using foam board. And the reason for that is that I've not been able to do perhaps scenically some of the things that I wanted to do on this layout. Now, again, thinking about future layouts and about the fact that I'm hoping at some point I might get a little bit more space, I would like to add something like a car flow operation, just like you see on the Bay Ridge branch, which would be absolutely wonderful. Strangely enough, I've got the bits from Walthers ready and waiting just in case I get the space. But the other thing that I would have liked to have included on this layout is some kind of almost water feature. I would have liked to have had a little creek going across like that with just one bridge so that the trains have to get to one of the industries across that bridge. And you see this on the Bushwick branch of the New York and Atlantic Railroad. Again, in New York, that goes out, whereas the Bay Ridge branch goes kind of south out of Fresh Pond. This one goes west out of Fresh Pond and ends up in the Bushwick area of Brooklyn. It's mostly single line track, and it's just a fascinating little branch line, which I will talk about in the future. So any future layout, again, space depending, will probably be a little bit of a fusion between the Bay Ridge branch and the Bushwick branch so that I can fit in all of the features. But again, going back to my point, I would have liked a bit more depth. That meant I could have made my scenery just that little bit more interesting and not the traditional flat baseboard that I've got. Number 3, I want to talk about electrics. Okay, so on my layout, my DCC power bus and droppers is pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's no problem with that. What my problem is with my accessory power bus. Now, this is just a plain 12-volt accessory, 12-volt DC accessory power bus. It goes from one end to the other, and all of my lights come off of it. Strangely enough, the point motors that I've got aren't powered off of that because they're DCC powered. But all of the lights, the things like the crossing gates, etc., all come off of that. There's plenty of power available, but it's fiddly. And when you look under here, I will put a picture, it's a bit messy. I am quite messy with my wiring. And whilst I try to stick to kind of colour conventions, I haven't done. So going forward, if I were to rewire this layout, I would probably look at more of a hub and spoke model for the lighting, and also put some switches in, because at the moment I switch it on, all of the lights come on, and as do the accessories, and I'd like to be able to have them so that perhaps I can power them separately, because sometimes you'll have interior lights on but you won't have street lights on. So that's what I would do with the electrics with this. Okay, so that is my top 3 things that I would change when building a new layout. I think, like most model railroaders, in our minds, we're 2 or 3 layouts ahead of where we are at the moment. I certainly am. And at some point, myself and Mrs. British Railroader are thinking of moving, and I'm hoping that one day I might get more than the little box room to be able to make my layout a little bit bigger so that I can incorporate things like a car float and whatever. However, I do still love this layout. I love the feedback I get about this layout. So big thank you to everybody out there. I do get quite a lot of feedback from people who live in New York, especially in Brooklyn, Queens, that kind of area, that quite often will say to me, this does look like where it's meant to look, somewhere on that western end of Long Island. So big thank you to everybody, and I hope that, you know, I can do a little bit more justice to it by finishing the layout. There is a lot of work to do. I will get to it. I just need, as I said, some more buildings here, some bits more around the back scene here, the diner here. My problem is after seeing Boomer's diner that he made about a year or so ago, which was amazingly intricate, I've got this, and I don't think I could do it justice because I would like to be a little bit boomer-esque, but I'll do the best that I can with that. That will have a proper interior and lighting. Okay then, that's it for this video. I'd like to end by wishing all of my viewers a very Merry Christmas, and to those of you that celebrate other holidays at this time of year, I hope that you have a good time as well. Just remember that, you know, Christmas can be a very lonely time, so if you do know somebody who is on their own, then please make contact with them, reach out, even if it's just you take them down the pub for a drink or buy them a coffee. It will mean the world to them. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, then please post them below. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me, again, put them in the chat or send me an email to the email address, which is coming along just here. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And when you do, and the little bell comes up, click it, press all, and you will be notified of all my videos as they come out. But that's it from me. My name's Steve, I'm the British Railroader, and I'm saying Merry Christmas from my model railroad room in Brooklyn Parl. Bye-bye.